And then when I had Dillon, I let go of my practice for quite a long time. So I didn't have work. And so I went kind of broke open again. And all this stuff I had worked on kind of split back open. And all of a sudden I'm like, who am I? I'm supposed to be a mom, but I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a career to validate me. And I felt really like I couldn't leave. Like I was kind of imprisoned. I almost had that feeling of like, wow, I can't just leave the house because I'm with this child. I can't just go out whenever I want. I felt kind of like held captive by this motherhood and this tiny human that I was now responsible for, but I didn't know what to do.
You're listening to the MILF Podcast. This is the show where we talk about motherhood and sexuality with amazing women with fascinating stories to share on the joys of being a MILF. Now here's your host, the MILFiest MILF I know, Jennifer Tracy.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Jennifer Tracy. This is MILF Podcast, the show where we talk about motherhood, sexuality, entrepreneurship, healing, artistry, vaginas, uteruses, wombs, all of it. It all comes out in different episodes in different ways. And I'm really not in charge of it. I'm just facilitating this message, which has been a really fun ride. So today on the show, we have marriage family therapist, Dr. Danika Zivot, who, when Danika and I sat down, we talked about a number of things, but one of the main topics was fertility and infertility and fertility treatments. I don't want to spoil the story because it's a really great story. Danika has a daughter who is currently 3.5. She and her husband and her daughter live in Los Angeles, where Danika has her own private practice as a therapist. So she was incredibly insightful, not just on this journey of fertility and finding motherhood for herself and parenthood for herself and her husband, but also just we talked about being a woman today and, wanting to claim that independence, but also wanting to make the sacrifices that sometimes we have to make when we're choosing our partnership. So anyway, she says it a lot more eloquently than I just did. And it's a great interview. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. It's my pleasure to deliver these episodes with these amazing women to you every week. I feel so honored to be able to do this. And I hope you enjoy my interview with Danika. Hi, Danika.
Hi.
Thanks so much for being on the show.
Of course.
So happy to have you.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
So, just before we hit record, we were sort of talking about our children and school, and my kid has anxiety and stuff. So I know it's hard always to kind of know that. And your daughter is 3.5 now? Or she's
3.5.
Oh my gosh.
She's amazing.
She's so amazing.
So in tune with her emotions, which is huge.
Yeah.
Because I was never like that.
Oh yeah.
Growing up.
Oh yeah.
It was about not until I was 25 or 26.
Yeah. And you grew up in Canada, right?
I did. I was born in California, moved to Michigan, then I went to Canada.
Right.
So I had some moving around.
Got it. Right. Now I remember.
Yeah. But I mostly grew up in Canada. Yeah.
Because your path is interesting. It's a little, you went to college and then it wasn't until later that you decided that you wanted to be a therapist.
Right. It wasn't really until I started learning. I did a bachelor's in business, and which I liked. I actually really liked it, but it wasn't until I started kind of on my own path of self-exploration, which was about age 24. I kind of hit like a bottom emotionally and kind of just like, what am I doing with my life? Which I think is pretty common after, talking to a lot of people that age. I think a lot of people are like, what am I doing with my life? Yeah. What, am I happy? Yeah. What's going to make me happy? And so I started in my own therapy, and really it changed my life. And it was through that. And at the same time, I was doing a master's of business degree. And I was taking like spirituality in the workplace, and I was taking management. And I realized management is so much about psychology. I think my teacher said it's 98% psychology. And so all of that combined with my own self-exploration just really made me feel like anything in the structured business world was really about making as much money as possible. But I realized that all this outside stuff isn't really going to hit the spot for me.
You mean going for a career that's pretty much money-based?
Money-based.
Yeah.
And yeah, I liked aspects of it.
Yeah.
It did hit some deeper things for me, but it wasn't deep enough. Because I realized like, wow, this outside stuff, having a nice car or having a nice apartment or having the right clothes, wow, I don't feel happy when I have those things. And that was a huge wake-up call when I was about 25. So I realized that, wow, I kind of really like helping people because I see that it can hit that deeper spot for them inside. It kind of is like our souls can communicate. And that was really beautiful because it filled me up. I saw that it had the opportunity to fill them up. Yeah. And that is where the power was for me, the deeper connection.
And where did you found that just out in the world?
Yeah, just people, friends of mine, or
like guiding them through stuff emotionally.
And
yeah. So then what prompted you to then say, okay, I'm going to go, because you already had your bachelor's. So you just then went to get your master's in not just, but you went to get your master's in psychology, which is a long road with all the hours. And
it was insane. It was totally crazy, but it was amazing at the same time. And I realized like, I really like this. I really like that this is hitting the spot for me.
Yeah, that's so great. And somewhere along that path, you met your husband.
I did. We were both working at a drug and alcohol rehab, and he was a therapist, and I was helping. I was kind of like, they called it a tech. So I would take the clients into different groups. And so I was actually sat in his group, and he was amazing. And I just kind of had a huge crush on him. And then we ended up both leaving that job because it got a little too insane. And we started dating like a year later.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember.
You were there through all of that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And so then you guys got married. I was lucky enough to be at the wedding. My son was at the wedding and he wore a tux and he was 1 year old. I may find that photo and post it with this. Oh my God.
I have those photos.
Oh my God.
He had red suspenders.
Yes.
And a bow tie.
He was like, all the ladies wanted to hold. He was like the ladies' man.
Yeah. He was so precious. He was the only young kid.
He was the only little one.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of your grandmother holding him at the end of the night with just his bow tie and suspenders on, his pants, no shirt. It looks like he's been on a bender. He's just been partying.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
It was a beautiful wedding. And so then after that, and this is where it gets really interesting. So how old were you when you got married? 30?
No, 27, 28.
So, and shortly after that, you decided to go for your PhD.
I did, but then I realized I started one program.
Uh-huh.
And it was actually right before the wedding when I started that program.
Okay, I couldn't remember the timeline.
And it was in Santa Barbara, and I was driving every 3 weeks there. And it was and I was doing my hours for my marriage and family therapy degree and trying to plan a wedding. And I just got overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And I ended up letting it go, which was a really hard choice.
Yeah.
Because I had to choose my relationship or my career, kind of. That was kind of the crossroads. And I chose my relationship at that point. Mm-hmm. And so that was a tough choice as an ambitious woman that wanted to help people and make money and all that versus, I'm a traditional housewife. It was kind of like that. And that was tough. Like I'm choosing this man over this ambition.
Right.
I mean, it really wasn't like that, but it felt like that.
Sure.
It felt like that.
And what helped you make that decision to let it go, to actually choose?
That I knew I could do it later. Yeah. I knew I could always come back to it.
Yeah.
And this was the time that we were getting married. And I was still working on my career because I was doing all my hours. So it's not like I was giving up my career. It just I wasn't ready for that level of commitment to my career at that point. And I knew I could come back. So that helped me.
And so then you got married and then you started your own practice.
Yeah.
And then when did you start the PhD? Was that before you guys decided to have a child, or I can't remember the timeline?
It was before we had a child. And then I took some time off when Dillon, my daughter, was born. I took about a month off. And then I went back and finished it. And that's when we had to hire help, even though I thought we could do it on our own. But when I had to do more hours, additional hours after I'd already been licensed, it was tough because I had to leave the house and, it was a lot.
You had a tiny baby.
Yeah, I think it was 9 months. She was 9 months when we hired someone to help us, which was a really tough choice for me.
Yeah.
But
So I want to hop back because this is a really interesting part of your story. So you and Jeffrey married, talking about kids, you start trying to conceive. Tell me what happened.
Well, I knew I had something called a didelphic uterus from when I was 16. Because I was having a lot of bladder infections. So they did an ultrasound and the doctor said, you have a didelphic uterus and you don't even have to worry about it until you want to become pregnant. So I was like, great. So I had this information, but obviously I was 16. So I kind of was like, whatever.
And what does that mean? That diagnosis?
It means my uterus, I have 2 separate uteruses. So one kind of entrance in the vaginal canal, but then it splits off into 2. So when I get a pap smear, they do 2 samples.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I knew I had that and I didn't actually really worry about it that much. Mm-hmm. But then before, my doctor actually said, go try to get pregnant. Like when cut to, I didn't worry about it. Then cut to, we were like, okay, we're ready to get pregnant. So my doctor's like, go try to get pregnant on your own. But if you're having difficulty, then come back. So that's what happened is we tried and tried and tried, I think for like 6 months, nothing happened. Mm-hmm. So we went to he sent me to a fertility clinic, which was in Beverly Hills. And I walked in and there were so many young people there.
Interesting. And you weren't expecting that?
Well, no, it was like this. It was so busy. I mean, young and older, but I was shocked to kind of see all these young women there that couldn't get pregnant. Yeah. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what's going on with our environment or our food or I know there's also deeper medical issues that people can have, but I was like, there's something else going on out here.
Interesting.
There's so many people here. Yeah. So that was kind of a big, huge eye opener. This is also a crazy part is the fertility doctor who was actually great and actually helped us conceive our daughter. So it worked, but thank God. But he was like, I want you to go get an ultrasound again. Because that was when I was 16, right? So he sent me to this other clinic where I got it. And the doctor there read my ultrasound. He was like, you don't have 2 uteruses. You have 1 uterus that's split into by this band of muscle. I was like, oh, okay. So I believed him. So go back to the fertility clinic. The fertility doctor's like, okay, now we're going to do some surgery. You can have surgery to get rid of that muscle. So then you can carry. I was like, kind of freaked out, but I was like, all right, sure. Because I was just kind of following their lead.
Sure.
So I go, they put me under. Then I remember, you go under and you don't remember anything. And then they wake you up. And I thought I had the surgery. The doctor comes in, they're like, oh, actually, we misdiagnosed you. And you actually do have 2 uteruses. So they couldn't do the surgery. I was like, all right, amazing. So that was also another twist to the whole. So he goes, I really think, because we had already made embryos at that point. I forgot to add that in. We already made embryos, which was a crazy emotional process as well.
Yeah. Well, I remember you going through that piece of it and doing that. And there was all this stuff you had to do. There were these, and forgive my memory, you'll remind me, but you had to take shots and it was just shots. It was very invasive.
Very invasive. Then they take out my eggs. I got so many eggs out. They're like, wow. Because I was only 30, so I had like all these eggs and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And then they made embryos and we decided to genetically test even though we had spent so much money by that time, and it was another, like, it was like thousands of dollars to genetically test. But we were like, you know what, we've come this far. We've already spent so much money. It's insane. But it was important to us to figure out, because they can tell which embryos result in a miscarriage and which wouldn't. So we were like, okay, that's important. Yes. So I had five. Yes, I had 5. They genetically tested. They threw away 2. So then I was down to only 3. So we were like, all right. Now, after all of that work, now we have these 3 embryos. And they rated them A, B, C. The girl was A, and I had a boy who was B, and a C. C was also a boy. So the doctor's like, so we were really grateful and happy. But we're like, wow, we only have 3 embryos. And this might not even work. It was just such an emotional roller coaster.
I remember you going through this. It seems like longer ago than it actually was.
How I got through that.
Well, you got through it one step at a time, and you do have an amazing partnership, which I wanted to ask you. How did you guys, because it's interesting, you said that you chose your marriage over your career at that time.
At the time, yeah.
And then now you have this hurdle to overcome together as a couple. Mm-hmm. How did you guys stay the course as a couple and stay connected in this? Because I would think, not having been through it at all, I would imagine that something like that would be very difficult and trying and exhausting and depleting. And, did it bring you closer together, do you think?
It did bring us closer together, thank God, because I could see how it could go either way. Yeah. But for some reason, because it was such an intimate process, it did bring us closer together. Mm-hmm. So I was really grateful for that, because I could see how it would definitely split people further apart. But we were really communicative, and we were just kind of like became a team through it.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you felt supported.
I had great support too.
Yeah.
You supported me through that. My dad and my mom really showed up for us, which I was so grateful for.
Yeah.
So the doctor said, look, we have these embryos, but your uterus, and we went to another specialist, and he, basically with a didelphic uterus, there's an increased chance of, like a very complicated pregnancy. Pregnancy could be fine with 2 uteruses, but it could also be high risk. It actually is a high risk. Mm. That being said, it could be fine, but it is considered high risk. So I went to a specialist, and he told me basically the risks. And
what were the risks?
Preterm birth, but really preterm birth, not just like 3 weeks,
like 10 weeks, or more.
Yeah. So that kind of freaked me out, and just finding out ways. And he's like, well, you'd have to be on bed rest, and we could, like, I don't know, something like sew you up or something weird. It might not have been sew you up, but it was something like that really freaked me out. Yeah. So that I was just like, this is sounding kind of insane. Yeah. And after all we had been through, and it was hard choice to end up deciding to use a surrogate, which the doctors ended up recommending, because they said, you've been through all this. We have these 3 great embryos. Why we have a better chance of like a fresh, healthy uterus. Mm-hmm. We have a better chance of it implanting in a fresh uterus, and not a fresh uterus, but like a healthy uterus, right? Versus your uterus, we have less of a chance.
Because there's complications involved. Yeah.
And I think surrogacy has become, at least in California, it's a lot more mainstream. Yes. So the doctors are suggesting it now, like it's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. So it obviously freaked me out, and I was very against it at first, but the more
surrogacy you were.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just like, I would never do that, But then the more I thought about it and researched and searched online for one, which is like online dating. Yeah. Because it's like you have their profile, and then you see their likes and dislikes. And it was kind of funny. I was kind of making fun of myself. So I was like, wow, I'm going to be dating this surrogate, and then seeing who's the best option. Who's my best potential mate? You
know what I thought of when I left here, and we can edit this out, but do you remember us going to sushi and having that conversation?
Oh my God, yes. I always forget about that.
I know.
And then, you know what? I thought about that like 3-4 months ago. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I totally forgot.
I don't know if you wanted to share it on the podcast, but it's such an interesting part of the story.
Yeah, is I thought, okay, I would feel more comfortable knowing the person.
This is before you found and used the agency.
Before I used the agency, yes. Is I thought, and actually my brother's wife offered to do it, but they had not had kids yet. And my brother was like, no. My brother, which is fine. I totally get it. Right. I was not upset at all.
Right.
And also they say if you're going to use a surrogate, they should have had kids already, because then right.
They've had a full-term pregnancy.
They've had a full-term pregnancy.
Sure. Makes sense.
Their body could tolerate it and they kind of know how to do it. And so I thought, who else could I ask? Because most of my friends actually had never been pregnant. So I was like, who could I ask? And I was like, Jennifer. I trust her. She had an easy pregnancy, easy birth. And I would totally trust her to do that. Plus, maybe she'd want to make an extra few bucks. So I asked you. We went out for sushi and I was like, I have something to ask you, but it's kind of weird. And you really considered it.
Oh, fully.
Oh, you were because you've always been so supportive of me and everything I've ever wanted to do, my dreams and my hopes and everything. And
all of which you've achieved, by the way. Can we just take a moment and recognize we're sitting in your home office, which is separate from your actual physical house, but it's on your property. I'm just so proud of you. I'm just so proud of you. So, okay. So we're at sushi. I remember where we were sitting. I remember all of it.
I do too. It's all flooding back to me now. I needed a reminder of that because I remember being very nervous and just asking you, because it's I have nothing to lose. If she says yes, amazing. If she says no, that's okay. Yeah. I totally get it. Yes. So I was I'm just going to ask her. Yes. And so I asked you, you were you seem kind of into it. Yeah. But I think after you processed it and realized.
What happened was I went home. So this was at least almost 5 years ago. I'm adding Dillon's age and then the pregnancy of that. So 5 years ago. So I was 38. And as my listeners know, because they've heard me talk about it on other of the episodes, I've suffered from postpartum pretty badly. But I did have a really healthy pregnancy and it was blissful and I had an incredible birth. And I loved being pregnant. I loved being pregnant. And so I went home and I told my husband and he was like, yeah, whatever you want to do. And money's good. But I was like, well, it's not about the money. I said, let me consult with my doctor. And so I called my OBGYN and I called my psychiatrist.
Yes, I remember this now. And that's really ultimately why you
decided. That was why.
Yeah.
Because I was going to do it. I was like, how could I not do this? This is the most amazing gift of service to this woman that I love, like a daughter, And I was kind of bummed when they were both like, probably not a good idea for you given your history. But ultimately, obviously, it all worked out exactly as it's supposed to be. And you guys went with an agency and it ended up being perfect. But I was so honored. I mean, I'm still so honored that you would even think to ask me something that intimate.
Of course. Yeah. That was it. I only asked you. My sister-in-law offered, they decided against it. And we ultimately decided against it. And then I asked you and that was it. So you're I'm the only one that I would trust to actually really do that.
And I was kind of the first one to, no, I wasn't the first one, but you had already had the childcare here. But when your brother got married, I got to babysit Dillon in Palm Springs and spend time with her and put her to bed so you guys could go be at the wedding and relax. And it was just so magical. I mean, time with her is magical if it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, but yeah, she's a miracle. So anyway, that was just an interesting thing that I thought of when we were in here yesterday. And then when I left and I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting, but I didn't know. So anyway.
I always forget about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's a great reminder.
So, okay. So then we went about choosing.
So we ended up using an agency because it's just easier. This is what they do. Mm-hmm. This is their business. So we ended up going with an agency and we interviewed 2 women that we ultimately decided against for different reasons. They were both lovely, but just some of their medical history. And we decided against it. And then we finally found this. Then we moved agencies. We switched actual agencies after that. And then we found this agency, and it was like immediate. And we saw the girl online first. She'd been a surrogate before, which we liked. One time she'd been a surrogate. She had a great history, and she had 2 kids and a husband, and lived pretty close. So we thought, this girl looks really amazing. Mm-hmm. So we met, and I thought we were just going to meet her, but she brought her husband and she brought her 2 kids to the meeting. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so lovely and meaningful, because it was like, this is going to be a family thing.
Yes, of
this
course.
Isn't just surrogate. This is like the surrogate and her family are going to go through this. Right. And I just loved seeing how they parent, and they seem so present and calm and just lovely. Yeah. And so we were like, let's do it. Yeah. So they have to test the husband for diseases and health issues and STDs and drug use. Sure. They had to test her. They'd test us, me and my husband. Yeah. And we did it, and we implanted, and we decided to do 2 embryos, the best 2, A and B, the girl and the boy, because that's what was recommended. And we knew it was a risk for twins, but we were okay with that. And the A took, which was the girl, and the B didn't. And it got absorbed in her uterus, whatever that really means. Right. It just kind of disappeared, never had a heartbeat, but it just kind of disappeared. It just never took. And the girl took, and the journey through her pregnancy was just unbelievable. We went to every appointment. My husband and I went to every appointment, and her husband went to every appointment. Mm-hmm. So it was like us 4 really showing up to bring this baby to life. We were all invested.
That is so wonderful, and something that I think should be more commonplace. And it's not, because it's like, my experience was I just went to all my appointments, and I think my husband came to 1 ultrasound with me, but he couldn't come to the one where they discovered the sex. And so my best friend came with me, Sabrina. But it's having that support is everything. Mm-hmm. Leading up to this. And that's why I'm so grateful that you're sharing this story, because I'm sure there are women right now going through this process where you were in it, and feeling alone and feeling like, God, I'm the only one going through this. And like, there are just so many thousands of women and husbands and couples and, gay couples going through, this process.
Definitely. And we did feel alone. We felt alone and isolated with this, and like we were on an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Every other day.
I'm sure.
And so it's great to be able to share, give back to people that feel alone, perhaps, or are going through something similar.
Yeah. And it was a long process. It wasn't like
Years.
Bada bing, bada boom. This was, okay. So implant, A takes, the pregnancy's going great. Mm-hmm. You're going to all the appointments, and then she goes into labor.
It was really easy. When I saw her in labor, because I was up at her shoulders, and Jeff, my husband, was behind a curtain, but could see the baby, like just the view of the baby coming out, but not like her vagina, right? So they wanted to kind of keep it boundaried, which is great. And she had her out in 3 pushes. And when I saw that childbirth process, it was such a beautiful process. But I was like, thank you. I was so grateful that my journey turned out, because I was like, this looks so difficult and painful and intense.
Yeah.
And I just felt really grateful in that moment that I didn't actually have to be pregnant. Yeah. I mean, obviously looking back, I wish I could have, but since I couldn't, I was like, thank God it turned out this way. Because I just dodged like a big trauma. Yeah. This pregnancy.
Yeah.
And childbirth.
And then did they put Dillon in your arms straight away?
They put Dillon in my arms straight away. We had our own private room. And she had her room that she just gave birth in, and the surrogate, the doctors tended to her, and we took Dillon immediately to our own room to bond with her, to do like skin to skin and all that.
And you had said that you had some feelings about that.
I did. It was such a strange feeling I had, and which I didn't expect, because obviously I'd never been through this before. But just the moment where she gave birth, the doctors checked out Dillon. Dillon was good. She could breathe fine and everything. They handed Dillon to me, and I left the room, and I felt like I was leaving this woman that just gave us the best gift in the world. And I felt so sad about that and kind of guilty. Yeah. Like, kind of like, thanks, peace, I'm out. like,
Thanks for the baby.
Yeah.
See ya.
Thanks for the use of your uterus.
Yeah.
But what happened was and then I realized after, she probably wanted privacy after that, and the doctors were there helping her and the nurses. So we took Dillon, and then a couple hours later, we went to check on her. And she was great. She just wanted to go home. She just wanted to get out of there. She was like, I did my job. Yeah. Glad the baby's good. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you still keep in contact with her?
We do. They ended up moving to New Mexico because they were living in California, but the way they were living just wasn't, the school system they were in for their kids wasn't the best. And just the job market and the cost of living, is just insane out here. So they ended up wanting to move to New Mexico, and they moved, they bought a house, they built a brand new house. They got a new car. Now their kids are they're thriving. They're so happy. They both have great jobs. The kids are in great schools. And so I really felt like that money that we ended up paying them for this lovely service, they ended up using to better their life. It's like, how beautiful is that?
Yeah. And give to their kids.
Give to their future. Kids.
Yeah.
And it's just like
and it will go on, and then those kids will give to their kids. It's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So it was just we had such a good experience. I know every surrogacy isn't necessarily that smooth and that positive, but we just had the best experience that we probably could have ever had.
So great. And how long did you have to stay in the hospital?
We stayed overnight, and that was it. We brought her home.
And then began the journey into parenthood.
Yeah. And we immediately bonded, and there was I was also worried, she spent this time in this other woman's body. How am I going to feel? And immediately it was this baby's obviously mine, and it had our genetics. So that was also a good part of the process, is we were able to use our own genetics. So that also helped, I think. And I think we could have bonded even if we had to use her egg but immediately we were like, this is our child, and it's so clear, and I feel connected immediately.
That's so wonderful. I mean, all different kind of pregnancies and births, even those that are not with fertility issues or in vitro, you hear, especially moms that have postpartum right after, they'll say, I didn't feel connected to my daughter and I felt so guilty, or my daughter or my son, you know what I mean? So there's a range, no matter the source of the pregnancy. It's there's such a range, a wide range that's all normal, and I think that's so important to say. And also within that, how wonderful that after everything you guys have been through, you brought this healthy, beautiful baby home, and you were able to bond pretty effortlessly.
It was definitely effortless. So I feel really grateful for that, because I know it could go the other way very easily.
So then, so now you have a newborn. Hello.
And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Yeah. And it was amazing, but it was also the hardest thing I've ever done my whole life. So I didn't know we obviously had to use formula. We used her colostrum for a few days, the surrogates. So she pumped, and then we put it into a bottle. And so we used her colostrum, but then we decided to use this formula from Europe, which a lot of people use because it's a little bit cleaner, that I found in my research, because I'm really into nutrition. So not that any of the formulas are horrible here. They're fine. But this was just a little bit cleaner. So we used this formula, and our daughter took to it right away. But I felt like I had a breakdown because I didn't know how to make the formula. So my mom was there helping us, and I was on the kitchen floor being like, we didn't know how to measure. It was just so, I think because I was so deliriously tired that I felt like making the formula for the first time was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Yeah. And my mom and I were both laughing and stressed out at the same time. Yeah. It was the weirdest thing. Yeah. So it was all these things that I didn't expect. I'm oh yeah, you just make the formula, give the baby the bottle, everything's great. Yeah. It's but how do you make the formula? What's the ratio? And how hot does the water have to be? And what nipple do you use? And what type of bottle do you use? And I mean, all those little details I didn't think about. I said, you shake up this formula, put it in the mouth, great,
Right.
done.
Well, because in my experience, when I was a new mom, every decision I made was so much more heavily weighted with it's life or death. Like you're in charge of this other human being. And if you fuck up, and so there was this just tremendous pressure for everything to be like scientifically perfect. And oh my God, that in and of itself is exhausting, let alone just caring for an infant and, the sleeplessness and so yeah. Oh my gosh. So, but then you guys progressed through that, and you and your husband have an amazing relationship, and he's incredibly involved and supportive, which is wonderful. So, okay. So what I was going to get back to is that you then decided to go back to school and finish your PhD.
Yeah, it actually, I wasn't a PhD. It's called a doctorate of behavioral health.
Right. Okay. Sorry.
So I just wanted to correct that.
Yes. Thank you.
But it's a doctorate degree.
And you're a doctor now.
I am.
Dr. Zivot.
Yes. Which sounds
It's
really
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is it like on your business card?
It is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep. It is now. I changed it.
And that was a long process because you kind of had to start where you left off, and it's a long process.
Yeah. It was a long process, and it was a great process, though. I learned a lot.
Yeah. And you did that while raising Dillon, while having your private practice.
Yeah. I don't know how I did that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But I wanted to say that it's doable. But we also needed to have help, because I realized I thought we could do it on our own, because we work from home. We have a practice out of our home. Well, it's separate, but it's on the place where we live. It's definitely doable. It's just not easy, because there is that guilt. There's that mom guilt that follows you, but I've come to accept it. And that what I realized about having help is she was able to bond to someone else other than me and Jeff. And I think that was really important, because I think it allowed her to trust other people, other adults. And I think that was also a great process to observe and have this connection to this other adult, not just both of us. So that was a good process too.
Yeah. And then once you finished that, and she was a little bit older.
Yep.
Did you feel, because we started this interview with you talking about how, at the time you chose the relationship, not fully, because you were still working in your, it's not like you just put everything away, but like just that feeling of like, because as women, there is this sort of, and it's not fair, because it's like women are equal. It's like, no, we're not. That's not even remotely,
because we just take on more responsibility.
Yeah. But now you're a mom, you have your own full-fledged private practice. And how does that feel to have that for yourself? I mean, you talked about the mom guilt, but
there is mom guilt. And I wanted to say, as I decided to work part-time. So I work about 20 hours a week, which is enough for me, for myself, primarily, actually, because I need to do self-care, right? I need my exercise. I need to eat healthy and prepare meals. And so that's really important. I wanted to make sure I had time for that. I also want to be there for Dillon as much as possible. So I decided to take on part-time, which is totally okay with me. Because part-time being a therapist is like, you're still seeing, 15 to 20 clients a week. And that's a lot. It's still a lot. It's a lot of therapy.
That's a lot of listening to people.
And I don't even necessarily I wouldn't even really want to do more than that.
Yeah.
Even if I had ability to decide that.
Yes.
But I'm trying to have this work-life balance.
Yeah.
But it's funny, because I have created this work-life balance, and being a mom and a wife, and for myself, my self-care, working. But then it's funny because I could create this fabrication in my head, like, but should I be doing more? Should I then, like my head, our heads can trick us into thinking like, this isn't enough. What I'm doing isn't enough. Should I be earning more money? Should I be taking on this other job? I should be
writing a blog and writing articles and traveling and blah.
Should I work on my marriage more? Should I do more it's like but when I catch my head or my ego or whatever you want to call it in that spiral, I'm like, what I'm doing, like I am enough. I'm enough and I'm doing enough. And this is good enough.
And that's a really hard thing to claim in general, but just like in this time of like Instagram and like, there's so much. I was talking with another therapist. She's a grief counselor and a therapist, Claire Bidwell Smith, about anxiety and about how the time that we live in right now, you pick up your phone and you're ingesting so much information. In like 20 seconds, you're like, you've got a news flash of what, our president's doing, or you've got, it's just too much to process.
Way too much. And no wonder why we're in fight or flight all the time.
Yeah.
We're always in that stress response.
Yeah.
Because it's too much. It's overstimulation. And I actually have deleted Instagram from my phone. I have no notifications except for my Ring, who's coming up my driveway.
Even your texts?
My texts I get.
Okay.
I get notified when someone
texts. To me. He said,
but that's kind of a good idea.
He said you can take off that little red dot that comes up and then you just check your text when you're ready. And I thought, oh my God, that's such a good idea. But you know what? I'm not ready to give it up. Like I need to see the red dot.
I think
very
because,
interesting.
Yeah, we get really hooked in.
It's addictive.
It's extremely addictive because we get the dopamine surge every time we get, oh my God, I got another like. Oh my God, people like, we don't think that like people love me or like me and I'm validated. But I think on a deeper level,
the feeling.
I'm validated. Yeah. Someone noticed me.
I exist.
Because that's what we all want. I exist. I'm enough.
Yeah, I'm enough. So which comes back to that. Like I'm doing enough. I'm being enough. I mean, it's just, it's, whew.
So I really have to remind myself of that all the time. Before Dillon came into our life, my life, speak for me, I had worked on my shame and I had worked on my self-esteem and I was feeling so good about, feeling like I finally had a healthy self-esteem. I did so much work on it and like, I feel good inside. And I had this career and a marriage and I was like, everything's going good, And then when I had Dillon, I let go of my practice for quite a long time. So I didn't have work. And so I went through, I kind of broke open again. And all the stuff I had worked on kind of split back open. And all of a sudden I'm like, who am I? And I'm supposed to be a mom, but I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a career to validate me. And I felt really like I couldn't leave. Like I was kind of imprisoned. I almost had that feeling of like, wow, I can't just leave the house because I'm with this child. I can't just go out whenever I want. I felt kind of like held captive by this motherhood and this tiny human that I was now responsible for, but I didn't know what to do. And I started to get like my shame kind of reopened. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And I can't do another dish or I'm going to lose my mind. I can't do another load of laundry or wash another bottle.
At that point, you had decided to find help.
Yeah, which I was pretty against before I had Dillon. And because I was raised with a nanny and I was like, we will never have a nanny. And since we both work from home, we're like, we can just share, if I'm in the office, Jeff could be at home with Dillon. When Jeff's in the office, I can be at home with Dillon and everything's going to be smooth and great. And we're going to raise our kid our way and ourselves. And I realized that after those 9 months and after I was so burnt out and also wanting to get back to work, I was like, I need some intellectual stimulation. Yeah. This isn't doing it for me. Yeah. I love this, but it's really hard. Yeah. And I just need to like talk to other adults and have a different conversation other than baby, 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 baby. Yes. And I would get jealous that my husband got to go to work and have intellectual stimulation. I remember feeling resentful at him. Mm-hmm. Like, how dare you go talk to other adults and have how dare you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how it felt.
Yeah.
I felt jealous and angry. Yeah. So I realized that I could actually ask for help. We ended up getting someone to help us out and we had to dip into our savings, which was also hard because I wasn't working and I was finishing up my program, my doctorate program. So I had no income. My husband was still earning money, which was great, but that was a tough choice too, because I had to choose my mental health and sanity and self-care versus our savings. That was a hard choice. But I just thought, this isn't worth it because this is just money.
Yes.
It's really just money. And the other part is like my health and my groundedness and my ability to be a good mom.
Yeah. And the long-term effects that it has when we don't make a choice to take care of ourselves.
Right. Like if I didn't get help, I think my anxiety would have soared through the roof. I would have transmitted it to my daughter, would have been hard on my marriage. And it was already starting to get like that. And I was like, I don't want this to get worse. Why risk this? Yeah. So we got some help, and that allowed me to go to the gas station and fill up my car with gas. It allowed me to go grocery shopping and feel free. Yeah. I was so grateful to be in the car to go to the gas station, to be in the car to go grocery shopping and being in the grocery store. I was like, this is heaven.
It is heaven.
It's
heaven.
pure
It's so
heaven.
It's nothing fancy. It's not like you're going to get facials not that there's anything wrong with facials, but I'm just saying like it's the ordinary things that doing with a child or taking a child out into the world or, and when my son was really little, I had terrible phobia about him being out in the world. As an infant, I had phobia about, at the time, this was 2009, there was a swine flu going around. There was a whooping cough epidemic going around. And people, so funny. I don't know if you experienced this, but I remember telling you about it when you brought Dillon home. I said, people are going to try to put their fingers in her mouth. It's the weirdest thing.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me that.
They would do it with my son. And I had to choose between feeling horribly uncomfortable and saying, please don't put your finger in my son's mouth. Or just letting it happen. But of course I said something because I was just like, did you wash that finger? And also, why are you putting your finger in my son's mouth?
It's so invasive to them.
They feel like I don't know. Anyways,
they feel like they're entitled to be
I don't know. But I wanted to touch back on something we spoke about, which is, at that time when you were standing there many days thinking, I'm done. I need help. Like kind of coming to that decision, that you were experiencing some form of, postpartum depression, anxiety, some form of that. And that is not necessarily, and you realize, and you can expand, that it's not necessarily only having to do with a hormonal shift after giving birth. That it's the childcare that comes after the birth and the sleeplessness and it doesn't mean you have to have birthed the child to have postpartum depression.
That's what I realized.
Yeah.
Because I think that if I didn't get help in that moment, I would have gone downhill very fast. Because I'd already seen the effects and the way I was starting, just like all my shame came rushing back and everything I had worked on before I had Dillon. Because I'm like all about working on myself. Yes, I'm a therapist. I've done tons of therapy. I've on a spiritual path, a path of self-discovery, so much work. And I was feeling so good about myself right before I had Dillon. I'm like, finally, all this work is paying off. Yes, feels good. I feel good about myself. Yeah. And then I had Dillon and like all that, it felt, I know it theoretically didn't go out the window, but it felt like it all went out the window. My shame came rushing back. I didn't know who I was, what my purpose was. I just felt like I was just cleaning up poo, washing bottles and doing laundry. That's my job. And I don't
trying to get the baby to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And then coming in the moment the baby cries or needs you.
Yeah. And that was just my purpose. And I was like, why don't I like this? There's moments, of course, I loved and my heart broke open in a good way, but also like, this is hard. And this is kind of like, I don't want to just do this every day, all day. It's boring. It's hard. There's no, like I said, intellectual stimulation. I felt lonely and kind of really, I definitely felt isolated, lonely and trapped. I feel like I'm trapped in this house and I can't just leave the house. I feel like I was locked in. And that was a really miserable feeling. So I think that I realized that, wow, I didn't even have to give birth for me to feel this way. That just the change in my role and
drastic change
in my role and not knowing what I was doing and having this little being that was dependent on you and that you're supposed to know what you're doing, but I don't. And why don't I? And what's wrong with me?
And you were sharing the story about the formula and you and your mom. This was when she was an infant, though. You and your mom were standing in the kitchen.
When we came back from the hospital.
So
we used the surrogate's colostrum, but that's only a few days worth, I think. It was like a week's worth, maybe, if that. My husband was actually driving up to like an hour drive to get this, because the surrogate said she would give us her colostrum, because that's what was recommended by the doctor. And so she was pumping out her colostrum. My husband was driving all the way to their house, getting the fresh colostrum, driving back. It was really sweet. But we had to make this formula that we imported from Europe, because I was like so obsessed with getting her the best formula, no sugar, no additives, pure. And then I realized I thought you just put the formula in, did some measurements, shook it up, done. But for some reason, the directions of the formula didn't make sense to me. And I was so delirious and I was so overwhelmed and exhausted. Yeah. And my mom was too, because she was there helping us. I was so stressed out. So I was having anxiety, but also laughing at the same time, rolling around on the kitchen floor, laughing, but also so overwhelmed. Yeah. And I don't know, it was just the craziest feeling. We figured out how to make the formula, but I didn't realize it would be that hard.
Yes, I didn't realize, and that sort of sets the tone for, my experience and many, it's just every decision that you used to make with no problem is wait, what's the domino effect of that decision? And formula, before I wouldn't have thought twice about formula, but then it's oh, wait, what are the ingredients?
How hot does the water need to be? How much do I give them? What's the nipple size I have to give them? What if it's rushing in too much? How much do you burp them? Do you burp them? Do you not burp them?
And if you're prone to anxiety at all, like I was already, but I think even if you're not, it just anxiety begets anxiety begets anxiety, and then it just becomes this thing. So you decided to hire someone. You found someone that you liked to help and be with Dillon, and you felt this freedom, and she got to experience
bonding to someone else other than me and my husband, which I thought was, now looking back, that was so important that she could develop another loving relationship with somebody else. Because now I see her with her teachers at school, she's able to trust other adults that are safe. So that ended up being best decision I've probably ever made in my life. Hire some help.
Oh, for sure. So one more thing I wanted to touch on was that yesterday we were talking about, we were kind of starting to wrap up, and you said that you wanted to mention how hard this is and how oftentimes, that's kind of been the topic of the whole podcast in general, but that there's this version out there that is I look great and I'm on Instagram, with perfect makeup and hair, and my children are perfectly dressed, and we're eating organic farm to table, blah, 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 and it's
and the lunch boxes are perfectly packed.
Yeah. And it's just, that's not real. And I think there are some women out there that are saying, like myself, it's messy. It's messy. And, sometimes I let my kid use the iPad too long now. I mean, he's 9 now, but, and just to kind of be in that, it's okay. And you don't have to kind of sort of measure up to this thing. I mean, I know you're not on social media too much, but.
Yeah. Just that, I think from a society cultural perspective, it's I can be a mom and a wife and a career woman and take care of myself, and my nails look nice and my hair looks nice all the time. I could be everything. That's kind of, I think, what's put out there for us, the role models, or they're trying to be role models. And then we think, oh, I could have a career and be a stay-at-home mom and be a perfect housewife and have dinner on the table and chop up vegetables and, fresh lunch for her every day. It's just so.
And still want to have sex with my husband
have
3 times a week. And it's just wait, what?
Yeah. It's this is insane.
It's insane. It's too much.
And I remember I felt like I was wearing 10 hats. Like, oh, got to put this hat on. Oh, take that off. Got to put this one on. Oh, and then now this other one has to come on.
And by the way, while you're doing all of this, don't age. Don't show your age. Don't wrinkle.
Right.
Don't
look beautiful still.
Like, I mean, it's just
and
like, are you kidding me? Like, it's just too much.
Yeah. It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
And I feel like I know now I don't have to live up to that. And I learned that, but I feel like so many women really feel like they do.
Especially right when you become a mother.
Yes.
The first.
And they have a drastic, I think, downward spiral.
Oh, yeah.
After they have a child because they realize, oh, I actually can't do all these things.
Nobody can.
And then they feel bad about themselves.
Yeah.
And then it's a whole thing.
There was a meme that went around recently. It was like, Beyonce does da-da-da-da all in one day. So can you. And I was like, and I love Beyonce. Like, I think she's amazing. And I'm like, but Beyonce has like 2 personal trainers, 3 chefs. Like, come
she has
on,
like 10 people helping her every day.
That's ridiculous to compare and say, I think I don't know. So yeah, I'm glad we touched on that. Okay. So it's time for our questions. Okay. What do you think about Danika when you hear the word MILF? Well,
I think of the stereotypical acronym.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to do a podcast that's, like that. Because I'm a professional woman and, but then I realized, it doesn't stand for that anymore. This is a new fresh way to look at this acronym, and the saying. And I think it was after I thought about it, I was like, this is definitely something I can get behind.
I'm so glad you did.
Because it's so important. Tremendously important.
And it's like, for me, part of that, choosing that acronym was a reclaiming of it in something, turning something on its head that was designed to objectify women.
Yep. And that was the meaning I first got.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh.
And so it's like, well, let's reclaim that and make it, powerful, and it's not like, would you like to F me? But do I want to, what do I want? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Glennon Doyle Melton, who's amazing, was saying something about how she tells her daughters, don't worry about what you look like, worry about what you're looking at. And I love that. That's such a powerful thing for us to teach our girls, What's something you've changed your mind about recently?
Yes, I have a great example of this. And I think also good to talk about. Another good topic is I realized that having kids and having a career and not taking care of myself, but having kids and having a career can be really hard on a marriage. Because trying to be good parents and trying to work together. And I mean, it's insane. Plus, we always bring in all of our whole history, to our marriages and our relationships. So both my husband and I have done tons of work on ourselves and continue to work on ourselves. But we just kept hitting these very specific, like we could identify the issues, like the dynamics we kept hitting, but we, for some reason, kept getting stuck. And he was like, why don't we go to couples therapy? And I was like, no, we're both therapists. Like, we don't need couples therapy. We've both been to so much therapy on our own. We can get through this on our own. We have all the tools, like we can read about this and practice on our own. That didn't really happen. We tried. We started to, but then, we got busy. And the best thing we did during that time is we did Saturday night. Even if we didn't go out on a date, we just either watched a movie or talked or, just tried to be intimate in some capacity. So that was the best thing that we got from there. But I was finally like, okay, we can go to couples therapy. So it took us a while to find someone. We went. We're still going every week. And I also said, we can go every other week. We definitely don't need every week. Now we're going every week. And I love it. I was like, this is amazing. Best thing we could have done for a marriage. So I definitely changed my mind on that recently.
So I want to circle back to, I just love you so much. I just love you so much. I want to circle back to the beginning of the interview when you said you were about to start this doctoral program, the first one that you had enrolled in, and you tried it and you said, I'm going to choose my marriage before you were about to get married. I'm going to choose my marriage. And so here we are again, and you're choosing your marriage. And I think that's a really profound choice. And it's a strong choice for you as a mom and as a woman, as an independent, like to have that, to get support and to, work towards your marriage.
Yeah, because I want to be a good role model for my daughter. Because I had a hard time with my parents when I was growing up. And they're divorced now, but it was tough to watch their dynamics, and I think kind of toxic for me, for the family. And I don't want to repeat any of that. And I think we've done such a good job not repeating 95% of that. But there was these I don't even know just these very specific dynamics that we kept getting into in our communication. Sure. And we just couldn't get past it on our own. We really, really needed that third party. And so I'm grateful because I don't want to pass that on. I don't want to be the one to create toxicity for my daughter.
That's awesome. Okay. How do you define success?
I think it's important. I like, cute clothes, and I like to be able to buy myself if I want to go get a facial, so I think that's important. Like there is a money aspect for me, but way beyond that is just feeling like I'm a success, my value. I think it becomes about my value inside. Like I feel like a success in my own self, despite any outside thing. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't like cute clothes, right?
Of course, yeah.
Or I like earning a certain amount, because that is important to me. But it's also way deeper than that, because that stuff will wear off. Like you can only buy so many sweaters. You can only buy like before you're like, oh, that didn't work this time. Like this isn't actually working to fix what's going on inside. So I think its success really has to come from me in my value, in myself, my integrity.
Well, like you were saying about going to school and getting your studying business, and then realizing you to quote you said, this isn't hitting the spot. And then you started learning about therapy and starting gravitating towards that work. And you said it was so fulfilling to see the light go on and help somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that to me, like if someone, I'm not just even my clients, but even a friend, if someone's like, wow, what you said really helped me. That to me that's what hits the success spot for me.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. This is just quick lightning round, silly questions.
Got it.
It's fun. Ocean or desert?
Ocean.
Favorite junk food? This is going to be interesting because you're such a
such a healthy eater. I think that for me, a junk food would be like a gluten-free chocolate cake. Vegan. But like to me, that is so yummy. Like to me, that like really, like I love that.
Yeah.
And that feels like yes.
Yes.
Like a vegan gluten-free chocolate cake. So
Erewhon, by the way, has the best gluten-free oatmeal chocolate chip cookies I've ever tasted. Have you had them?
No, but I'm going to have to try
that. That could be a treat for you three.
That sounds really yummy.
They blow my mind every time. Movies or Broadway show?
Broadway show.
Daytime sex or nighttime sex?
Nighttime.
Texting or talking?
I'm such a big texter now, which is so
Me too.
sad. But I really do. I would rather one-on-one talking. Not a group, but one-on-one.
Yeah.
That definitely overrides texting for me. But texting's just so convenient. Gets the job done.
When you have a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cat person or dog person?
Dog, 100%.
Have you ever worn a unitard?
Is that with the bicycle shorts?
With the legs. It goes all the way from the legs.
When I used to do jazz in the 80s, when I was a younger child. Yeah. I have a picture actually.
Yes.
Of myself in a side pony, a purple unitard.
Yes.
And then it had like neon shapes on it.
Of course it did.
Yeah.
I have one that's blue. It's like Smurf blue. And there was just like a hideous rhinestone belt that went with it.
The rhinestones.
That was the thing.
It's back in style.
It is back in style. Shower or bathtub?
I really only take showers. But every time I'm like, I don't want to do a bath. It's so annoying. Get to fill it up. But every time I get in the bath, I'm like, this is pure heaven.
It's so good. But it is a whole ordeal.
But I make these excuses like this is so hard to draw this bath. I don't have time.
Yeah.
And then when I do it and I get in the bath, my whole body instantly relaxes. Everything just goes.
I love baths. I love them. Ice cream or chocolate?
Ice cream.
If it's gluten-free, vegan, healthy.
Gluten-free for sure, because it would be. Yeah. But I used to, I mean, my favorite as a child was like vanilla ice cream, just plain vanilla ice cream. Now they have some really good coconut milk ice creams.
Oh, they do. They're so good.
That's really yummy.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at ping pong?
4.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
I have so many pet peeves.
Okay, just pick one.
You know what? Since we're talking about moms and children, I really have a problem because I'm a therapist too. When parents, and so many parents do this, and I don't, it's like, I don't want to judge for that, but it irks me. It bothers me. If their child is crying and then they say, "You're okay. You're fine. What, there's nothing wrong here," or distract them. Like, "Look over there. You're okay. Be a big girl."
Yeah. Oh,
big boys don't cry.
Yeah.
Real boys don't cry. Like those messages when a child is having emotions that need to get out. Because what happens is those stay trapped and frozen, in my opinion, and they stay with that child.
Yeah.
And then I have adults.
Opinion, though. There's research.
Yeah. But I feel so strongly. And then as adults, we go into therapy. We have to unpack all that shit.
It's so true. And I'm so grateful I learned that lesson from my baby class teacher, Wendy, who really, I remember my mom actually came to visit and my son was maybe, I don't know, they were all about 1. They finally had started, I think, sitting at the table and having their banana and their water and stuff. And one little boy fell down and it wasn't my son, it was another child. And my mom leaned in and said, "You're okay." And Wendy, the facilitator, said, "Oh, let him decide." And it was so profound. And my mom, she just comes from a totally different generation. And I think that's just what it's an instinct.
It's normal, but that's normal. It becomes normal in society.
Normal.
And especially with, older generations.
Yeah. And so, and I learned in the same place that you did, like to learn the language of, mirroring back what happened, like you hit yourself or this happened, validating their experience.
You're upset.
And you're crying. It's okay to cry.
Yeah.
It's okay to be upset. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
You're safe.
You're safe and let out all your emotions that you need to let out.
And my son now, who was, raised with that kind of, I'm so grateful I was willing to learn that stuff. He now at 9, like in bed, he was saying, "Mom, I'm having a lot of big feelings." And I said, "Can you name them?" And he was like, "I'm angry." And I always think this, like, God, it took me 30 years to be able to like say that sentence about myself.
Definitely. When I was like, I used to say in my earlier 20s, all I felt was anxious and angry. Those are my feelings. And happy. Anxious, angry, and happy. I didn't realize there was all these other feelings.
Yeah, me neither.
So that is a huge pet peeve of mine that I experience all the time. It drives me nuts.
If you could push a button and have perfect skin for the rest of your life, but it would also give you incurable halitosis for the rest of your life, would you push it?
Yeah. Because there's gum, there's mouthwash. And it's on the inside. No one can see that.
Okay, this is a weird one. I have to get a little weird because I like to be weird. Would you rather have 6 fingers on both hands or a belly button that looks like foreskin? I wish you guys could see her face right now. She's horrified.
I feel like the belly button thing you can remove easier.
There you go.
The 6 fingers might be a little more difficult to remove.
More
I just want to remove it.
Surgery.
Yeah. I would just want to remove whatever. Either option.
Superpower choice, invisibility or ability to fly?
Invisibility.
What was the name of your first pet?
Willie, a boxer dog.
What was the name of the street you grew up on?
Kind of grew up on 2 streets. But the first one when I was younger was Woodbriar Circle.
Willie Woodbriar. That is your pole dancer name, stripper name, porn name, whatever you want to call it. So that's how we wrap up the MILF by claiming that name. So Willie Woodbriar.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
That's amazing. Willie Woodbriar, it's been an honor having you on the show. Danika, I love you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I really appreciate you tuning in. Also, just a quick reminder, if you want to enter to win a MILF tea, we already had one winner on October 15th. The 15th of every month, I'm going to be giving away a MILF tea or tank, your choice. So if you'd like to enter to that and also subscribe to our newsletter to get any kind of news from us, we're not going to bombard you with emails, I promise. Just MILF podcast stuff. Head on over to milfpodcast.com and register. Otherwise, I look forward to bringing you another episode next week. Thanks so much for listening.